Y'all, it has been quite a week in pickleball. From pay cuts to getting blocked by the PPA on social media to pickleball at SpaceX, nothing is off limits on this pod, including exposing who has been called the Harvey Weinstein of pickleball.
What?
So sit tight, grab the popcorn, don't move. It's pod 29. It's
justice time.
You tune in now to This Pickleball Life. I'm K-Dubs and Jilly B is my wife. She's the pro and I've got the filler. She's sweet to me, but on the court she's a killer. Unadulterated and efficiently bringing you the best and worst things in PB. Tell your friends and stay for another. And no one loves us more than your mother. One thing's for sure, one hit and you're addicted. Grab a pile, grab a court, don't resist it. So click subscribe, let's go, let's get cracking. Things on gun, let's go, let's get laughing. This Pickleball Life.
well done, K-Dubs.
You know, this cold has its benefits. Welcome to your favorite pickleball podcast, disguised as an investigative journalism podcast.
What? So when did that happen?
I'm ready to let that go.
Me
but
too.
Until then, this is This Pickleball Life with me, K-Dubs, Duper 4.092, and my other half.
What's up? I'm Jilly B, aka Jill Braverman, pro pickleball player, former tech CEO and startup founder, and maybe most importantly, co-host of TPL, This Pickleball Life.
So with that, let's get to episode 29.
So since we've been blocked by the PPA, which to be clear, I'm a contracted gold card player on the PPA tour, not sure if the NBA's ever blocked one of its players for literally bringing to light ethical issues around equipment testing and other important questions that need to be asked. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. We're going to touch more on being blocked later. But in the meantime, we want your opinion on some new titles for this pod inspired by being blocked. So what do we think about Two Mouthy Broads?
Doesn't involve enough pickleball, but I like it.
Okay. You don't like TMB? Okay. How about She Speaks, They Block?
It doesn't involve me.
Oh, that's a good point.
Hey, I'm spewing too.
Okay. I think I got it, guys. I got it. Women belong 3 feet behind the kitchen and not on podcasts. That might be a little wordy, Kristin, but we could call it for, just to shorten it, WBTFBTKNOP to help people remember it better.
Well, but if Knop. Got it. Yeah. The only problem I have with that is that 3 feet behind the kitchen line is more of a mixed doubles thing, and
true.
We're really universal around here.
I'm not standing 3 feet behind the kitchen. All right, Kristin, take us through in case you missed it.
All right. Pickleball has now entered the new play place arena. Yes, we're talking fast food chains attracting people to their hamburgers with pickleball. We're talking to you, Sonic in Texas. Where was that when I was in Texas? Come on. Also, Elon, as in Musk, has opened a pickleball facility at his SpaceX facility, again, in Texas.
And they're charging $1 per quart or $1 per hour. What is it?
It was cheap. I don't remember what. No, I can't even remember. But I just love that we've finally gotten another billionaire in pickleball.
That's just what the sport needed, guys.
Yeah,
we all know it.
Maybe Elon will start writing the checks.
Elon, I'm selling a team. Call me.
What would his team be called?
Oh, that's easy. The Tesla Superchargers.
No, there's got to be an X in there.
Sorry, I've already thought of this.
Tesla Superchargers. That is actually really good.
Okay, that was credit to Steve. Good.
And we have a new 21-court pickleball facility opening up in our neck of the woods, Indian Wells, California. And no, we're not talking about the gardens. This is pickleball paradise behind the Embassy Suites. So come on down and check out the latest in pickleball in the desert.
Yeah, I got to play on the courts yesterday with a small group, including the owners, and they are awesome. 21 courts, really well-sized, enough space behind and on the sides, easy access, easy parking, totally flat, all 21 courts. And what's so cool about this story is, and briefly talking to the owner, he told me he literally called the Embassy Suites Hotel because he saw on Google Images they had tennis courts, like in very little use. So 5 months after that initial phone call, he's got a long-term land lease on the property for the courts and 21 courts built. Is this the fastest ever from phone call to pickleball facility business built and being opened next week? That's so cool.
Amazing. And they have really, really great membership packages. So I'm really excited to see all of our friends back.
I'm excited to train and
to go.
Maybe even teach there. So yeah.
Not that I can do much pickleball, but I'll be dinking. I'll be drilling.
I'll be dinking.
Also, guess who's joining the gang? APP has now announced they are getting in the team play game, which should get kind of interesting, which I will touch on a little bit later. But everybody wants teams. We got senior teams, we got jigsaw teams, we got MLP teams, we got the remainder of the Vibe teams, part of MLP teams. We got, is this merger gonna happen? All that and more coming up.
That is a lot of team play next year. 5 Sundays of APP events will feature team play with a $100,000 prize purse. So curious to learn more details and watch that develop.
Is there a world where we're going to look back on pickleball and be like, remember when pickleball was an individual sport?
Right. I mean, what we talked about early on in our podcast was I think pickleball's at this inflection point, this existential crisis of, is it going to be team-based or individual-based? And you never see in any other professional sport equal viewership interest for both a team component and an individual component. Yes, you have golf where there's like Ryder Cup and everyone goes crazy for that, and President's Cup, but it's once every 4 years.
Yeah, well, that is what Liv is betting on too.
Right.
They have teams.
And people love that.
Yeah.
Anyway, now we have way greater and different existential crises happening. It's not stopping anyone from jumping on the team bandwagon. All right, we are so excited to announce something Chris and I have been working super hard on. The holiday must list. Products you must have this holiday season. And you can find this must list where, Kristin?
On the newly unveiled JillyandBraverman.com.
That's right.
Come on down. Learn more about Jill. See her videos. See her information on instruction and camps. Speaking of camps.
That's right. We are so excited to announce we are going back to Mexico.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
right. October 28th
Adios.
through the 31st next year. You can find us and you can join us in a super small group in Baja, 1 hour north of Cabo, at Pickleball Paradise. No, not the Pickleball Paradise in Indian Wells, but Pickleball Paradise called Tres Palapas, which you've probably heard us talk about in previous podcasts. We're doing 3 days of instruction, 1 session in the morning, followed by what I love, which is nightly match play. So there's team components like an MLP team style night, and then there's going to be ladder and partner paddle battle. So you get to really implement what you learn in the morning with a margarita in your hand at night. So if you're interested.
Not to mention that Jill will be at these events actively coaching anyone who will have it. So you get that real time, am I implementing what we learned, and what am I doing wrong because it feels like this, but it's actually that.
Yep. So we've got early registration open, which is going to save you 10%. You can learn more at JillianBraverman.com or email us at thispblife@gmail.com. Needless to say, I am pumped for this. Also pumped to announce, as part of the holiday must list, we are announcing our new partnership with Hesacore Grips. So I saw this grip first at Nationals.
Coolest grips.
And my boy Jaume Martinez Vic was playing it, of course, en route to a silver medal at Nationals. And I was like, I got to feel that grip. Let me see that thing. And I grabbed it and I was like, okay, this feels like a massage for your hand.
That's a really good description.
That's how it feels.
Yeah. Hesacore, coming from the idea of hexagon, is basically these little jelly kind of extensions underneath your overwrap that are in the shape of a hexagon that give you a little bit more texture while you're getting more squish. So a lot of people that have hand pain, they need to build up their grips, right? Same thing in golf, bigger, squishier grips for people who maybe have arthritis or tendonitis problems. But you get the benefit of it not feeling so bulky because of those Yeah, those voids created by the
Okay,
hexagon
I like
shape.
never could have described that in a million years. This is why we're a really good team. I'm like cave woman pickleball.
I feel good. I like.
I feel good. I like C ball, hip ball, and here's Kristin. Like the hexagonal dimensions of the physics and the force are creating in your hand more comfort.
Totally. Well, they have been popular. They've sold out multiple times.
3 times.
And they have just gotten in a new shipment.
We've actually had to delay this announcement because they've been sold out. So
Yeah.
good news. You can go on Hesacore.com, use code JILLYB for a discount. I think for $22 if you want to have better control, feel better, and no slip. I think this is a no-brainer for you. And we're giving away a Hesacore grip, which we will ship to you. All you have to do is comment on YouTube what size you'd like, what model, what color. And then we'll go ahead and choose a winner and have that shipped.
You don't want to have them say hex me?
Hex me? Oh, yeah. Hex me, baby. Hex me. You don't have to say the baby, but yeah, let's do hex me plus the
We'll
model,
find out your
color,
size and shape later.
So I play a small and I have pretty long hands. They just sent me the extra small, which also feels really good. So I don't know if that helps you guys in determining your size.
Yeah. What is actually small is kind of medium because it's
Yeah.
extra small, and then medium. There is
Right.
no large.
Yeah, think of small as medium. And then on the topic of YouTube, if you are watching this on YouTube and you haven't clicked subscribe, do us a favor so we
Smash
can
it.
keep making these pods. Smash that subscribe
Bop
button.
it.
Bop it.
So yeah, don't think we haven't forgot our last winner.
Mm-hmm.
Last week we made it rain and you rained hard on our comments, but congratulations to A Jones 681 making it rain, baby. We will be in touch to get your information on that rain.
Congrats, A. Jones. And we are going to be ramping up the giveaways, you guys, going into the holiday season. So get ready.
Wow.
Ruck Solar Packs. Do you have someone in your life who's impossible to shop for? The Ruck Solar Pack is definitely our favorite pickleball bag. It's also sleek, fits your laptop, your paddles. You can visit ruckpack.com. That's RUKPACK.com. You can use code JILLYB for 15% off your next order.
All right, so are you ready for the big pay cut?
Let's talk about pay cuts.
Yeah, the irony of this podcast in our inception is Jill did not want to be the news or focus on pro pickleball at all. And every week I'd be like, should we talk about this? Should we talk about that? And she would be like, no, it's not. We're not the news. And here we are.
The news.
We didn't just become the news, but we became part of the news.
my
So it's a
God.
twofer.
Hey, Mom, look at us now.
Yeah, we still want to continue to be and get back to
You know,
the humor, the
yeah.
funny stories.
Funny stories, helping amateurs get better,
Helping
emphasis on
amateurs.
writing into us with Dear Jilly B. So yeah, we have been super focused on news and pro pickleball. It seems people do like that, so we'll continue trying to lean into that and then blend it back to our core values.
But in
so,
all seriousness, we do really try and stick to things that we actually are a part of
And
or
know and can
or
speak
have our
to.
own relationship to the news, so to speak. So with that,
and the truth is a siren call. It's hard to ignore. So,
absolutely.
someone's got to speak it. So let's talk about the pay cuts, K-Dubs. Run
Yeah,
us through
so-
what happened last week.
Just in case not all of our listeners or viewers don't wake up and choose pickleball social media violence, what happened is in this attempted remerger, MLP and PPA have to do something about A, their payroll, and B, how these contracts that were originally written as individual entities are going to blend in this theoretical new co. And so we knew something was coming to kind of clarify the relationship, and what we got was a 40% pay cut. So they basically wrote an email that stated, we've parted ways with Brooks Wiley, who has been the commissioner since the inception. They're asking for a voluntary pay reduction of 40% in conjunction with a reduction in your number of required days from 200 to 120. And you'll be given a minimum of 10 PPA starts. And please call Danny with any questions. Danny, if you're okay, please comment. Blink, blink.
We did call Danny actually right after the email went out. And I did have
Yeah,
a
but
question.
that was right after the email. She's had 7 or 8 more days of who knows what since then.
So we did call Danny right after the email went out. I did have an important question for her, and it was, have you started drinking yet? I will not share her answer, but I will let you guess it. Danny, we love you.
So yeah, the unwritten threat basically was, if you don't agree to this voluntary pay cut, you will be placed on a developmental tour where you are flown around the country to do camps and clinics.
Well, I think that was actually in there. And I think the kind of unspoken threat, which the PPA leaked to the Dink, was if you as an MLP player do not agree to this cut, you cannot play PPAs. And I know that that was reported to the Dink. It's just not said anywhere, and I haven't had it confirmed anywhere, but I'm pretty sure that's the unspoken threat here.
Yeah, so it's kind of been announced throughout, like, oh, this person has agreed, but, you know, to what extent, and are there actual contracts signed on both sides? Are there any clauses of outs for any other reason, knowing that this merger still technically hasn't happened? Lots of questions in the air, but yeah, who has the leverage here? To me, it's still the player.
And I think that that letter left a lot more questions than answers.
For sure.
Like, what does 10 slots in a PPA event really mean? Are there event fees? Is there prize money in those events? Do you have a main draw guarantee? Is it true that you can't play PPAs next year if you don't take a reduction? If players say no and you send us all over the country on a developmental tour, do you pay our expenses? So I'm still having trouble getting really answers to a lot of those questions. And I have a few issues with the current construct of the offer letter. Again, PPA leaked to the Dink, or told the Dink that if you don't accept the cuts, you'll be unable to play PPA. Well, everyone signed with MLP, remember, because they didn't want to play the PPA. So how is this consideration, right? The removal of a threat, to me, isn't consideration in my book. So another question I have, are PPA players being told that if every single one of them don't take cuts, they don't get to play MLP? So is the inverse true? I highly doubt that, but I don't know, because very little is actually transparent with the PPA. And then you have to absolutely question what you are hearing from any of their media outlets or even other podcasts, because it's just really opaque.
And it's really kind of a question of individuals who thinks of get to versus have to.
Right.
So how many players are out there going, I want to play PPA, but I have to play MLP, versus how many players are saying, I want to play MLP, but I have to play PPA, or get to? Like, who thinks that it's a privilege versus an obligation?
Interesting.
And I think that's going to color a lot of who agrees to what.
Yeah.
To be honest, like, people are incentivized by very different requests.
Well, and then you have this notion of like 10 slots for PPA events. Again, you know, the MLP players chose MLP because they didn't want to play PPA. So explain to me how this is consideration. And if next year we're all under the same umbrella of players, why are there these lines of demarcation between, well, she's an MLP player and he's a PPA player? Are PPA players being told right now, and I think I touched on this, if you don't take a pay cut, you can't play MLP? You know, I doubt that.
Right.
And I know for a fact that there are still PPA players who have not been asked for a cut. I don't care what anyone else says. I don't care what any other tweet that goes out or any other pod says. I know this for a fact.
Yeah. Well, and the kind of, you'd think that the motives of most of the MLP side of things merging with PPA want to merge because they want to see the PPA players playing on teams. But we know, for example, Lucy and Matt opted out of the second half of this season. Are they going to be forced to be on a team?
Right.
So
it's all
that is still TBD. But
and the reason I know that there are PPA players who have not been asked for cuts, I've spoken to them. To them.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So am I...
and there's one other thing that's been said that I think is somewhat interesting, that perhaps some of the players on the lower end of these deals have been asked if they want just a blank a check cut in advance to just get out of their contract completely. which I think gets a little spicier with the APP thing. Because once you've been like dismissed of your obligations to be only playing team-oriented events with MLP, now they might be the players that you'll see end up on the APP team stuff.
So, all good points. Are we a fan of the cut? I think if there's real consideration to be had, the answer to that is absolutely. Something has to be attractive above and beyond. If you don't do this, there is no tour. There's no tour viability, because I don't subscribe to that MLP will go bankrupt, because 2 months ago you had team valuations at $10 million, and everyone knew going into that and buying into that profitability was a very long ways away, and that the league will be burning funds for a while, as most startup sports leagues do. So I don't support the we're going to go bankrupt, because I think ultimately the owners, the MLP team owners, will do what they have to do to protect their valuations. And pickleball is still America's most popular asset and fastest growing sport, and beyond attractive enough as a business opportunity. So MLP will and could raise capital if required. So offer me something that is meaningful consideration, like my freedom, right? So let me go play any event I want next year. Pickle for America, APP, the next competitive tour that comes out, Tuesday night pickleball. Well, that's team-based. So as long as it doesn't compete with the MLP team construct, give me back my freedom, and maybe I would consider a cut. And I think a lot of players feel that way, and I think that's a really fair ask. We didn't ask, and we didn't want to play the PPA, so give us our freedom back. That's actual consideration to me. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think that that's the ideal. Is the freedom back.
Yeah.
But I think a lot can be said about startups and the way that they spend, but it's kind of the nature of it. I mean, we see it and saw it in Silicon Valley, and I know it's easy to look at these contracts as inflated, which they are based on where the sponsor dollars and the viewership of pickleball is right now. But I also want to remind people that the entire budget of salaries is still equal to these random 100 plus players in the NBA
players
who I've never heard of. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, $14 million. Max Strus, $14.4 million.
You don't know Kentavious? Dude's
Tyus
the man.
Jones, Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, I obviously am not the biggest NBA fan in the world, and there's probably a few of those names that you guys know from their college experience or whatnot, but there's all of these players above 100 making the entire pool of PPA and MLP salaries. And so my point is, for 3 years, if that's what this costs to legitimize and wrap up this industry, like it's a drop in the bucket if you believe what obviously all of these team owners do believe, like Mark Lazary, who has obviously seen what's happened to the valuations since he started at 100,000 and now they're up to 10 million. So
he's a huge believer in the growth. And lastly, on this topic, I'm not certain the merger is going to happen. It's failed before, and I'm not certain the merger is good for the sport. I'm not certain MLP knows fully who they're getting into bed with. And if you were to interview Tyson, McGuffin, Riley, Newman, Jesse Irvin, and ask them why did they leave the PPA and choose MLP, I can't speak for them, but my guess is that you'd hear that they were done with the PPA's constant shenanigans. They were over it. It was more than just money, or more than just believing deeply in the team format and the MLP leadership. So, I don't think what anyone fully appreciates is that since we've released our last couple podcasts and blown the whistle, so to speak, the sheer number of stories we've received to our email from angry former and current sponsors of the PPA Tour, former and current employees, unpaid vendors, so many unpaid vendors in the six figures, is just, it's almost like impossible to believe. And we're not able to do all those stories justice, but we know some folks who are. So sit tight and grab the popcorn, because I think pickleball is going to be even more interesting in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, the unpaid vendors thing just always reminds me of Trump, and it didn't stop him from getting elected. Sure. And that was like his number one MO. So It's interesting the more we dig and learn about the different behaviors of perhaps some unethical people. It's that they continue to get away with it because everything they do is just close enough to almost making sense, you know? And it's really sad because, you know, there's no way to out and out just nail someone to the cross, because there's always that fuzzy area where it's a he said, she said, or it was on a phone call. So, you know, I think we get enough people
to
together
nail to the cross now.
that
And also a lot of
that
it's
makes
just
a big
time. We're
difference.
going into 3 years of business, so enough stuff's piling up and coming to light.
Yeah, that's very true.
You know, and regarding me being anti-merger, it's funny. I think Brooks Wiley was pretty much dismissed for being anti-merger, which is really interesting. I don't think MLP could have that attitude knowing they were going into player negotiations for pay cuts. And I'm not sure Brooks in good faith could have sat down with the players that so trust him and frankly lie to them, tell them he thought this was the best thing for them when he didn't. So I really empathize with Brooks and all the good work and the trust that he's built with the players. And I think that's a really interesting cause for firing, is being anti-merger. And to be clear, yeah, I'm definitely anti-merger, which should mean a lot because I am in a hyper unique position here, except for Ben Johns. You know, I have significant equity in Major League Pickleball. Doing this merger with the PPA, this merger of equals, is really good financially for us. But I still think with my whole heart and brain that it should not go through. And actually, I don't think it's financially good for us, because I don't think doing this merger with an entity where all these awful things are about to come to light and starting to come to light is going to be good for us as a merged entity.
It's hard to have a lot of faith in the entity when you know what's in the underbelly.
What's in the underbelly.
And the right thing and the easy thing are not always the same. And that's kind of the crosswords we find ourselves in. And I just keep coming back to, like, ultimately, it's a lot of money, but money is just money. There's always someone with more of it.
Yeah.
You know, these couple $100,000 contracts are a much bigger deal to the people receiving them than the people giving them.
Correct.
So,
well, I also want to address the voices on Twitter. Yes, I've been tweeting. More on that later. Loving Twitter.
Has she been tweeting?
I keep seeing these voices on Twitter that are like, you know, Steve Kuhn should be in jail for this. Well, 5 intelligent people voted on breaking up the first merger. You know, board members, here they are. Ann Worcester, who has flipped from wanting the merger to not wanting the merger to now attempting to help, you know, facilitate the merger, so wanting the merger. Zubin Mehta, who had worked tirelessly on the first merger, don't forget, I did too. I wanted it too at one point. He resigned immediately after the vote to kibosh the merger. Matt Davis from Anheuser-Busch, Melly Price, co-founder of Major League Pickleball, professor at UT Business School and founder of Front Gate Tickets. She resigned recently, but for other reasons. And Steve Kuhn, who obviously resigned. So now the MLP board, you have Ann Worcester, Tim Parks, Matt Davis.
And who's Matt Davis?
From Anheuser-Busch. So don't forget, the first merger broke up not just because it wasn't a merger of equals and it was a raw deal for MLP, but because MLP was frankly tired of dealing with Parte II. And an MLP executive who was in the heart of all of this told me after the merger broke up, and I quote, Jill, you have, because I called this person, I was pissed. I was pissed the first merger fell apart. And they said to me, Jill, quote, you have no idea what it was like dealing with them. We tried our hardest to work with them. We tried our hardest. That's a direct quote. So all those reasons, they still exist. They didn't go away. So I think the reasons the first merger failed are the reasons that this merger could fail as well.
Yeah, the longer it takes, the more it makes me wonder, like, who really wants it and who's really trying to compromise and come to the table, because you'd think that if that were the case, it would have already completed.
Right. It's already dragging on, I think, longer than they wanted, which again was part of what happened with the first.
So, yeah, speaking of voices on Twitter, Jimmy Miller PB, we're talking to you.
Yeah, no, I've gotten acquainted with Jimmy more on Twitter lately. I don't watch, like I said, I don't watch other podcasts. But I really respected something he said on Twitter, which was in response to Lea. And I can't remember what she said, but it was pretty, aggressive. I think it was like she was like eviscerating him, right, on Twitter. And he wrote, "This is why I will always be Team Lea. Her honesty, whether I agree or disagree, is refreshing. In this case, I spoke to some players, just have to take their word they aren't lying about being cut, but I understand what she says as well. I agree with both of you, and my guess is that it was likely 10% regarding the cut. The lack of transparency is a real concern, and that's why I think the players deserve a voice and a seat at the table. Hopefully one will be able to bring that to fruition." But yeah, a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, you and Lea are friends now. What the heck? You guys were fighting." And it's so funny because I think with men, they can get in fights on the court and then be having like a beer 3 days later and no one thinks that's weird. But if two girls who've been friends for 2 years and 99% of their relationship's been good and they have it out one time, one night for 1 minute, and then they're friends again or talking again, it's like, wow, how did that happen? That's so wild. But my point is, I agree with Jimmy where like I appreciate Lea's voice. I appreciate that there's anyone willing to stand up and talk when so many people sit silent, sit back, and hope for change. And like I always say, hope is not a viable strategy. So we just need more voices, and I respect his response.
Yeah. So another thing he touched on that you kind of mentioned was the player collective, or what some people would think is close to a union, but there is a very clear distinction on the difference between a player group and a union.
Yeah, I was never talking about a union.
Unions.
So just to articulate and clear up what I've said on previous pods is that there's a moment in time, which is right now, where we have leverage as players to come together and form like a collective. I think we're far from a union. I don't think this is the right time. And I think there's complexities there that we can't, unfortunately, begin to chew off
and I don't
right
think
now.
I don't know of any sport, y'all can correct us if I'm wrong, that has a union, but almost all of them have a player advisory group. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was on a player advisory group when I was on the Symetra Tour.
And then I see you wrote in here the NFL Player Commission.
Yeah.
They have a seat at the table during owners' meetings.
Exactly. So yeah, that's really it. It's just someone who represents the players, who's looking out for their best interests. And I think honestly, a lot of owners would welcome that. And I know there've been sort of versions of this in the past with MLP, having players to kind of represent, but really having meetings and then going to those meetings is a very different thing. In other words, I think the previous players were just like, okay, I'll be on the Zoom call. But they weren't like actively meeting with the rest of the players to decide what the will of the players should be, or what the kind of the sentiment of the collective should be in those meetings. They're just themselves. And I think that's a very important distinction, is players getting together and talking about the things that matter to them and using their collective bargaining.
100%. We've put our trust and our faith in agents and managers and executives in these organizations. And I think the end of that story is that hasn't worked great for a lot of players. And so I'm a huge advocate of, why don't we put our trust and faith in ourselves right now and think for ourselves? I know it's hard, but sometimes you have to think for yourself.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately, not everyone has to think for themselves, but they have the opportunity to.
They have the opportunity to right now. So let's talk about getting blocked by the PPA on social media.
Yeah, very interesting. What's the move there? I mean, just to keep us from commenting?
What did I say that was
really that necessary?
What did I say that was so bad? Okay, here's what I wrote this week. Pickleball.com, which is pure propaganda for the PPA. Like, no matter what anyone tells you, don't listen to, they're just relatives. Like, okay, it's pure propaganda for the PPA.
Who owns what? Right, all comes back to the money.
Yeah. Both owned by Topco, Dundon. Okay, so they did a post that said, Nationals by the numbers. 3,500 players competed, 49 states represented, 632 players traveled from California to Texas. And then I commented, 17 toilet paper rolls. Okay, that was a little snarky. I'll give credit there. And then I tweeted, message to MLP players from the PPA. If you don't accept this pay cut, you can't play PPA events next year. Also, PPA events next year. Lea and Catherine Parenteau versus the Brashes 27 Sundays in a row. And Ben and Colin versus Matt Wright and Jack Sock. Who you got for mixed?
Yeah.
Guess they didn't like that.
Well, at the end of the day, if Pickleball.com was not the PPA, their news would include APP too.
It would include, yeah, it would
I don't see any news stories about what's happening to Johnson brothers in their indoor finals match.
All right, so we have a poll for the audience. What should a leading sports organization with ethical leadership do when a player calls out factual injustices on the tour? A, silence the player at all costs, block them on social media. B, have an open, honest dialogue. Respond to the allegations and claims transparently. C, ignore all the claims and do not address any of them. If you guessed a mix of A and C, you won. Congratulations.
B.
Oh, B, have an honest dialogue, actually respond to these allegations, respond to the player, call the player, respond to her text messages, respond to her emails.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Transparency. It's
brutal.
It's a really interesting word for some people.
So yeah, Kristen encouraged me to use Twitter. 6 days later, I get blocked. Thanks, Kristen.
Hey, well, they can't block you from the rest of the world. Although I'm sure they wish they could.
By the numbers, by the numbers.
Oh, yes. Escape
Nationals.
from Dallas.
We cannot escape
Every
Nationals.
time we think we're out, they drag us back in. But this is good stuff. This is actually a lot of what Jill and I were passionately working on in the year that we both worked for Duper. But Duper's study of nationals ratings compared to the Dupers.
And for just a quick reminder,
medalists.
I was CEO of Duper. I worked for 3 years at Universal Tennis Rating, which is now UTR Sports. And I ran the commercial department there. I was employee number 15, left when we had 120. And
that was Universal Tennis.
That was at Universal Tennis. And then Steve asked me to be CEO of Duper. And Kristin also worked there with me for a year, doing all sorts of data analytics and marketing.
Yeah. So this is, again, the ultimate don't hate the player, hate the game. And I would love your confirmation on this, but I do feel like we continue to hear from people who tried to play up in a bracket and were told, sorry, no, you have to stay in the lower bracket. So
I think it's don't
this
hate the
comes
player,
down
it's hate the game.
To the USA piece saying, okay, we're going to use Duper to determine that you are too good for this bracket and here's where you belong, let alone the voluntary version of that. But
so here's a USA Pickleball Nationals sandbagging summary. Give us some examples of what your rating was if you won gold versus the bracket you entered.
Yeah, so these are sorted by the differential between those two things. The worst offender was in the well, I don't even know. Do we want to say what skill?
Yeah,
they're
for
in?
sure.
The
I want to get people's names up here.
Women's doubles 3-5. Been there. 19 to 34-year-olds. The gold medalists' average rating was 4.887.
No way.
This is a person who might legitimately be thinking that they're gonna try and be a jigsaw team athlete.
My goodness gracious. No way.
And they're playing 3-5 women's doubles.
And then mixed doubles 3-5, same age division, had the same issue.
Yeah, and honestly, that makes sense. 19 to 34-year-olds who just came out of college playing tennis or something and are on this meteoric rise to their skill set plateau, probably did start out the year a little closer to 3-5, but no longer. They are 4.856. There was a 4-0 medalist, a gold medalist with a 5.346 rating. I mean, get this person on a team.
Wait, I'm sorry.
These are averages. There are two people creating
I'm looking
this
at
rating.
Men's singles 3-5, age bracket 35 to 49. So again, this is men's singles 3-5. The person who won gold was rated 5.090.
I mean, what is going on? Why? Honestly, I feel like if I'm that person and I'm like, okay, I qualified for nationals, but they want me to play in this bracket, that's not even fun for me. I would just not play.
Yeah, why travel?
Look, I don't knock you if you were like, this is where they made me go, but I mean, what do you think those scores were in that bracket?
Come on, USA Pickleball.
11-1, 11-0.
So looking at these high-level match competitiveness and this analysis, at nationals, only 50% of the matches were actually competitive. So that's deemed by the winner scoring 65%. or less of the points. So that would be like a score of, 11-6 or closer.
I also always liked that stat because I feel like when you're out there playing, sometimes you forget that. But if you lose 11-7, you should feel like, hey,
pretty good.
we gave them a run. If you lose 11-8 or 11-9, you should feel like, hey, that was anyone's match.
I agree with that. And at Nationals, only 30% of the matches were close, defined by the winner scoring 57% less of the points. So that would be like an average score of 11-8 or closer.
Yeah, so 30% of matches were within 11-8 or closer.
In a quarter of the matches, this is terrifying, the winner had an average score of 11-4 or better.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Totally.
So, what can USA Pickleball do to be better? Adopt Duper. I mean, it's simple. This is the gold standard in ratings right now in the sport. A lot of hate on Duper. Is it perfect? No, but no rating system ever is. Everybody, for the most part, thinks their rating should be higher. So I always joked, rating's accurate if half the people think it should be higher and half the people think their rating should be lower.
Totally.
Like if you're hearing that, like you're qualitatively, anecdotally accurate.
Yeah, and I know I was reading through some kind of negative comments on Duper last night, and a lot of what people are always saying is, "Oh, it should be more like golf," and it's like, no, golf is way easier because it's a golf course versus a human.
Well, you're not
humans already in golf have at least a 10-shot swing on a regular basis. The worse you are, the more it can be like 20. I mean, I had a student 2 days ago who sometimes shoots 72, shoot 98, and was like, who am I? Right? And now we're talking about 4 different humans on one court.
Well, in
there's
golf,
going to be a lot of variety.
Yeah, in golf, you're not decoupling performance among pairs, trying to disentangle performance among pairs. So it's not that simplistic.
The fact that Duper is perennially proven as accurate as it has been is so impressive.
Yeah, no, I think
really
I saw
just don't get it. They don't see the numbers we've seen, but
well, they should, and I think maybe Duper could do a better job of like showing behind the curtain, reminding people like, look, this is our accuracy. This is how we judge every single week in, week out, that the algo is performing to expectations. Like this is just math. Like it's literally just math to know if it's performing to expectations or not, the algorithm.
Exactly. Yeah. No, a lot of people don't know that, but every single week we would look at that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Every time there was
and track the predictive power of the algorithm. So literally week in, week out, we'd get the report and it would show like, okay, it's just as accurate as it was last week. Now, if we make a tweak retroactively and run the same data set, did we increase our accuracy? Did it decrease? So again, it's all math, and the people that are running it now are very, very, very intelligent. I say now like we weren't. No, we did just fine.
Make Duper great again.
So last week we hinted at a very serious topic that had been brought to our attention regarding sexual abuse and sexual harassment. And we're going to go into that very heavy topic right now. So we have in front of us a copy of the complaint that has been filed on behalf of the plaintiff and the victim, with whom we have spent quite a bit of time speaking to and really trying to understand. All right, so we have some pretty serious claims here, and the defendants are USA Pickleball, Don Pabin, Don Stanley, and Pickleball Topco, doing business as the PPA Tour. So who is Don Pabin? You may have heard us talk about Don in our previous podcast on Nationals. He was the tournament director of Nationals, according to USA Pickleball's website. He serves as the managing director of Nationals and pro player relations. In this role, Don works to determine the pro standards for all USA Pickleball professional events, NCS events, and USAP national championships. He was, as we know, the former director of equipment standards, or head of equipment standards, so responsible for paddle testing, and of course that now infamous video of where he said, "You don't want me to test the Yola paddle, it'll fail," and that was for Grit with, I think, AJ Kohler. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's how as I remember it.
Prior to joining USA Pickleball, Don spent 34 years in the fire service. He's a former competitive tennis and paddle tennis player. And then we've got Don Stanley. We know Don, again, he was on another one of our podcasts, and he is listed on the PPA's website as the head referee for
PPA.
for PPA, and he's listed on USA Pickleball's website as a USA Pickleball certified referee, registered referee trainer, regional training coordinator, and head referee, of course, of the PPA Tour. And he is USA Pickleball Rules Committee chairman, interestingly enough.
So that's who we're dealing with.
The complaint for damages include sexual assault and battery, sexual harassment, hostile work environment, FIHA, retaliation, failure to take all responsible steps to prevent harassment and retaliation, misclassification, failure to pay proper wages, failure to provide rest periods, meal periods, inaccurate itemized statement, waiting time penalties, labor code retaliation, violations of business and professional code, negligent hiring and retention, and negligence, wrongful termination, intentional infliction of emotional distress. So it sounds like after reading this humongous, 40-page brief, the sexual abuse claims are really against Don Paben, even though it looks like Don Stanley was involved in a lot of inappropriate behavior concurrent to all of this.
Allegedly.
Right. What we're talking about right now is the brief, what we've read.
From the brief. Mm-hmm.
And then it looks like we have a receipt here of an actual email from Don Stanley to this referee firing her.
He wrote in the email, "You are no longer welcome to be reffing
PPA
while
events.
I am the head referee because my wife is uncomfortable with that." Like the fact that his wife would have any say whatsoever in whether or not a person is equipped to referee, I think is inappropriate no matter what happened.
Right. And then we had
Those are not real reasons.
Well, then we also had multiple sources tell us probably wasn't his wife. He was having an affair with another referee during this moment in time,
right.
Which is also listed in this brief. So that to have that in writing, like you just said, that's the reason for firing. I'm not an attorney. That does seem like some pretty unfair.
Yeah,
firing.
That has nothing to do with your capacity
Competency.
as a ref.
Right.
Or your professionalism, so.
And then it looks like, PPA is obviously mentioned in here multiple times. Connor Pardo by name. He's CC'd here on numerous emails about this issue, about the sexual abuse, the sexual harassment, the unfair firing. At one point he says, you're welcome to referee on this tour. You're not being blocked. But she was never given another job, right? You apply for the jobs and then someone hits like accept or deny.
Right, because basically it came down to Don Stanley being able to continue
block
to block her. So
yeah, this brief was crazy. Frankly, I don't think we're equipped to really do this justice. I think the goal here is what we talked about. Let's make sure proper investigations actually transpire this time around.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Very heavy case. Very, very heavy case. We have talked to 5 different referees in compiling the information for this podcast, and there's definitely a theme here with Don Paben named very specifically.
Yeah, and I think the answer is actually very simple. There are people who need to be looked into and most likely removed from their positions of power, which they have repeatedly abused. And we feel a little bit like this is not necessarily our news to tell, but we feel impassioned enough that there's wrongdoings repeatedly going on, and nothing is black and white. But at the end of the day, when your job is a referee, you should have a very, very respectful and clear relationship with rules. And clearly that is not the story we have been told. So I hope that that more of this comes to light.
Absolutely. I think along with the sexual abuse and harassment allegations lodged against Don Paben, we also received email copy that was sent from referees, concerned referees, to the then USA Pickleball board. And that email discussed issues with Don Pabin, who was then head of equipment, and him blackmailing a paddle company, asking for free gear and discounts. This referee reached out to the board, as we said. We have the emails, and then CEO Stu Upson responded, "I will look into this," but the referee was aghast that there wouldn't be like an independent, neutral third party looking into these allegations of blackmail. We did ask for comment from Don, and the PPA, so did not receive a response from the PPA. Did reach out to Don Pabin. Oh, he said, "Sorry to hear that." I said, "Hi, Don, Joel Braverman, get ready to film a podcast regarding the claims filed against you. Would you care to comment?" He said, "Sorry to hear that." And then I did reach out to Don Stanley, and Don said he has no earthly idea what the claims could be. He is totally, completely in the dark here. I found that interesting because I also have receipt of an email from his brother to the victim, to the victim's attorney, to Connor Pardo and the PPA, being knowing very well what the issues were. So,
yeah, this is a person who has continually behaved in a way that is unprofessional at the end of the day.
Are you talking about Don Pabin and Don Stanley, or one or both?
Yeah, I think I'm talking about both. Mm-hmm. But definitely Pabin. It sounds very, very consistent from the numerous sources that we have spoken to.
So we hope that USA Pickleball actually does launch an investigation. It sounds like they probably should have a long time ago into Don's conduct, given the email that we received that was sent to the whole board about all the equipment testing issues and the blackmail issues and the giving away paddle issues. I hope PPA, even though this is a pipe dream, also launches an equivalent investigation into Don Stanley's conduct in this regard. That's, I think, really what we can hope for here.
Yeah, I think we can also hope on a broader scale, put more women in charge.
Yeah.
Already. Like, they're there. And it's just so interesting, the people who, it's like the reluctant king thing all over again. You want to put the person in charge who doesn't really want to be in charge. If you find that person who really wants to be in charge, they probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's well said. So here's to hoping these organizations do the right thing, look into this, because it sounds like it's very, very long overdue.
Yeah. So if you're out there asking how can we help, I mean, definitely feel free to still reach out to us at thispblife, whether we end up, talking about it on the pod, or we just direct you to the right people to tell your story or to use that information. We're happy to be a conduit. Anything else?
No, I think that's well said. You can reach out with any information you may have, and like Kristin said, happy to be a conduit however we can here.
Yeah. All right, are you ready for Dear Jilly B?
Yeah, let's do a Dear Jilly B. So we have a female in her late 30s. She's about a 5.2, 5.3 duper.
Late 30s.
Reach out to us with a really interesting Dear Jilly B. Full disclosure, this is my sister, Natalie.
Cat's out of the bag.
Cat's out of the bag. So Natalie reached out and said, Dear Jilly B, I am so confused because I just played in my Monday morning or my Sunday morning group, and we were rotating partners. I got paired with who I thought was one of the weaker players, and we were unbeatable. But when I played with some of the better players, it was a mess. How can it be that I play my best with one of the weaker players? And she kind of already knew the answer to this. Like, you've got to find a partner whose style of play complements you, who brings out the best in you, right? We always talk about Sarah Ansbury. She's, a master instructor, but even more masterful as a partner in figuring out what kind of energy you need, what kind of humor, do you
Giving
need
you
silence?
the right gasoline.
Yeah.
Making you feel like you're in your salsa.
Yeah, so my sister played with this partner who was super consistent, not very aggressive, and my sister's related to me. I can let you guess what she's like and what her personality's like.
Luckily, she does prefer the right side, though.
So, when you're thinking about who to play with in your next tournament, I don't be surprised if you choose someone who maybe isn't the best partner, but that could be the best partner for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, the yin to your yang.
Exactly.
Zig to your zag. So let's finish with a little good-hearted pickleball humor. What do you say?
I love that.
We have encountered a book we both love by Marlene Bell. Her first book is Pickleball, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and her other book is called Pickleball, Wine, and Friends, because therapy is too expensive. And I always say that about ukulele. It's way cheaper than therapy. Pickleball is the same way. But here's a few of Jill's favorite snippets. Let's take turns.
All right, pickleball solves most of my problems, and beer solves the rest.
I
That's
think we
just
already
truth.
knew. Jill liked that one. Posted it on her Instagram a couple days ago. 4 out of 5 doctors agree Saturdays are better with pickleball. The 5th doctor didn't hear the question because she was out playing pickleball.
Smart doctor. Smart doctor. All right, weekend forecast, 100% chance of pickleball.
You know it. I know I play pickleball like a girl. Try to keep up.
Love that one. Pickleball is like duct tape. It fixes everything.
Everything. Weekend forecast. Pickleball with absolutely no chance of house cleaning or cooking.
That's just truth.
In Jill's case, 100% chance of all 3.
Yeah, that is actually true. All right, you can't buy happiness, but you can play pickleball, and that's pretty darn close.
I don't always play pickleball.
Oh, wait.
Yes,
I do. A day without pickleball won't kill me, but why risk it? I agree with that.
Never underestimate an old man with a pickleball paddle.
Lord, that is some truth there.
Totally.
I think that's a
Can't judge
great
book by its cover.
I think that's a great note to end on. If you haven't filled your stockings yet, stuff them with Marlene Bell's books. I've been trying to get a hold of Marlene Bell. I can't find her. Marlene, email
Marlene,
us.
come back to us.
thispblife@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. We absolutely love your stuff. It's so funny. It's feel good. It's chicken soup for the pickleball soul.
Yeah, we need to find someone to run your social media channel. All those quotes deserve air.
They do. Awesome. Well, look, everyone, pickleball is joy. You know that's the sign off.
Don't let anyone tell you differently.
We out.
See you next time.
This Pickleball Life is a Tomahawk production, 100% organic, self-made, and homegrown. Music by K-Dubs, editing by K-Dubs and Jilly B. Check out pbgods.com and use code PBLifers for 10% off your next order. Do you have a question for Jilly B? Email us at thispblife@gmail.com to be included in future episodes. Don't forget to click subscribe.
This Pickleball Life.
Hi, Toby.
People want more Toby.
People want more Toby.
Comment. You want to pick him up? Give him some stage time?